kind of like a, I think people like Mike because that's kind of a unique kind of character.
And I have
You just see how games and possessions are more intense, how they mean more.
I'm not putting him on.
I think the U.S. is going to obviously win.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Nothing But Respect. My name is Patrick Redford. As always, I am joined by Harry Krinsky, and we have a very special guest this week here to talk Golden State Valkyries, roster construction, who's going to get that 12th spot, which section should you buy your tickets in, how do you get to Chase Center. It's Maitreyi Anantharaman of Defector. How are you?
I'm doing well. Excited for a Valks chat.
It was perfect timing that you would come on the show because I was at the Rights to Ricky Sanchez draft lottery party last night, which is a hilarious event. And the first words out of the host's mouth had to do with Color Star. So it was like I felt like I was a part of history, knowing about the being about to talk to the breaker of the great Color Star Philadelphia 76ers story. We're gonna talk all things W because the season starts on Friday, and but before that, I want to give a quick scene report. This is something we do on this pod. I was at the Rights to Ricky Sanchez live party, draft lottery party, which was a success for them. So much so that it was like a secondary story to me that the Mavs got the number one pick, because the main thing that was going on in my community that night was that the Sixers kept their pick. So there was chance of Ace Bailey going on. But the funniest and most kind of prescient moment was there was lots of great jerseys there, as you could expect, lots of incredibly random jerseys, one of which was a Nick Stauskas jersey. And so I was like, oh, Nick Stauskas. I went to Michigan. I love Nick Stauskas. And I'm like, oh, where'd you get that Nick Stauskas jersey? And he just turns around, lifts up his jersey to reveal that there is a second Nick Stauskas jersey. This is a Kings Nick Stauskas jersey.
Wow.
Under his Sixers Nick Stauskas jersey. The then kind of, which was awesome, amazing, and he was a great, really sweet guy. The funniest part though is I was like, why do you like Nick Stauskas? And he honestly dodged the question. Wasn't kind of willing to explain why he liked Nick Stauskas.
I don't like to talk about it.
Yeah, he just was
refused to stand on or even near business, is what I'm hearing.
It was not Michigan. It was not Kings. It was not Sixers. It was not Canada. It was like
interesting.
He just was like, oh yeah, dude, I love Nick Stauskas. So,
I remember in college, getting back from a party or something and seeing that Nick Stauskas was on a really early version of Instagram Live at 2 a.m. just kind of drunkenly rambling in front of 30 people. And I just remember thinking being an NBA player does not necessarily mean you have a good life. This is a bad situation.
Dude, I think about that when I think of James Wiseman's Instagram stories sometimes, where he's like, yo,
what was he posting like?
He's
Pistons legend, of course.
Pistons legend.
James Wiseman.
R.I.P.
Yeah, he's doing stuff like tap into my gaming channel. It's fun, and then I go, whatever.
Undignified.
Yeah. Last two, orders of business around the draft. We linked up with friend of the program, Drew Millard and Friedlander. Great to see them. We got some real boots on the ground stuff. There was at one point probably the low point of the evening was a Coolio spike of the Rights to Ricky Sanchez did a process-related Coolio spoken word piece, which I think was designed not to land, to his credit, but did not land. Really, kind of booing, people booing him.
Really don't like that string of words. None of those words are in the Bible. It's a bad sentence.
You don't need to be doing rap renditions. Leave it to the pros. Leave it to Weird Al Yankovic. He's sort of the only one who should be doing that. And then just, which I'll put in right here, an electric crowd pop at the Pelicans card coming up, revealing that because of the weird logic of the lottery, that meant that the Sixers were keeping their pick and not giving it to the Oklahoma City Thunder. So
draft belongs to
An electric evening of sports podcasting.
I have to ask, Maitreyi, as a Pistons fan, how did it feel to not care about the lottery for like the first time
I didn't even realize
ever?
until like I saw people posting about it that it was going on. I flipped like right in time to watch the top 4 release. But yeah, I've been so closely acquainted with Deputy Commissioner Mark Tatum for so many years that it felt weird to just not be in that zone anymore. But I have not been to tankathon.com in a year. I didn't know any of the odds.
That's like
it was exciting.
What a nice way to live. The Kings had a 4% chance of keeping their pick and vaulting into the top 4, which is somehow less dignified than just straight up not having their pick, because I still had to go refresh Tankathon a few times, and obviously they didn't keep it. So,
well,
the Sixers are the most like the rights. It makes sense that like they would have the lottery party. Like the process is just this like orgiastic obsession with the lottery as a phenomenon. So I'm glad they got to. I hope they stay there for a very long time and continue to enjoy that.
They had their own like language around the lottery. We were talking last week with Henry Abbott about developing a language of the body. They had language around the movements of the lottery. They were like, all we have to do is make it to the commercial. If we can make it to the commercial, we're in. And they did. And you know, we're excited to see what can happen for the 76ers next year, but we are more excited. That's professional podcasting for you, to hear about this WNBA season, because it starts on Friday. It's almost rote a little bit at this point, but people the line going around is most anticipated WNBA season in WNBA history. My sense, which I think we should sort of pressure test, is that is actually true in this case. This is a sort of cliche that seems true, but let's start with that. Do you, Maitreyi, do you buy that it is the most anticipated WNBA season ever?
Yeah, I do. I think there's enough like on and off court intrigue that I think that there is a like really plausible case for that. There's obviously the like subtext of the collective bargaining agreement negotiations that are going to be happening throughout the season into the winter. There's like a bunch of new coaches in place, and so I think just the way the actual product looks, the way most teams play, could look very different. And then there's just like the sophomore leaps from all the rookies that everyone was really into last year. So it should be fun. And then there's also the issue of next free agency, which will sort of blow up the entire league. And so this could be the last time we see players in certain jerseys.
Yeah, I think that's like the number one place to start with this season, is that like it's like every non-rookie besides like 2 players is a free agent after this season, because the cap, or because the CBA expires and the cap is going to spike at a crazy level, right?
Yeah, basically. So when the players and league signed the 2020 CBA, they like put this opt-out deadline, decided to opt out, which makes sense because the like new TV deal that was just part of the NBA's TV deal is obviously like valued at a much larger number. And so pretty much leading up to that, like every player has just been signing like 1-year deals. And so, yeah, everyone except the rookie people on rookie contracts, and then 2 players are going to be unrestricted free agents, which is kind of wild. Like, I don't think that's happened in sports.
Right.
So,
I can't think of,
I really don't know what to expect.
Yeah, even like this last offseason, like you mentioned, all the coaches shuffling, it feels like not every team, but a lot of really good teams' rosters are like totally different. Like, did the Connecticut Sun have like more than 4 players on their team? Like, how did you make sense of all like the shuffling before the season? Like, was this more than usual player movement, you think?
I think so. And like because of the 2026 free agency bonanza, I kind of like didn't really care about any of the moves because I just feel like everyone's going to press the big red button and we're going to reset. I don't know how drastically different things will be. Like, I would kind of be surprised if any of the big players on the Liberty, say, left for a new team. It's possible. Like, people just stay in place. But I think, like, at the front office level, there's kind of this sense of, like, we get a reset button if we want and can kind of just do whatever this year. So, like, Phoenix is a good example of that. They swung some trades. They, like, don't really have a bench or anything like that, but they swung some big trade and they don't have many picks, much like their son brethren. They do not really have much left to trade with, but
$2 hot dogs though.
Yeah, I saw that.
Or whatever.
And $2 like Dasani water as well.
What a steal.
What a steal.
Okay, so can you do a bit more of level setting about the CBA stuff as it informs this year? Because I know I will get into kind of the conversations about the macro and the micro here, but I just want to get like this one macro thing figured out around the CBA, which is that there's this opt out after this year. So this is the final year of this CBA, and it will be renegotiated. And my sense is that those who are following this closely are saying that this is going to be a kind of gnarly or at least high leverage negotiation because players have players have a lot of data that is pointing to the fact that they should get paid a lot more money. And anytime that happens, ownership, digs their heels in. Is that basically, and all of that is going to come to a head after this season, but we're sort of on one last hedonistic roaring 20s season before all of that happens. Is that a correct sort of like vibe assessment?
Yeah, that's definitely how I feel about the vibe of this season. In terms of like how acrimonious the negotiations will be, I'm not entirely sure. Like, one interesting factor is that there is a like new class of owner in this league who like actually does want to spend more and will go to possibly illegal CBA violating places to try to spend more. And those people have like come into the league since the negotiation of the last CBA. And so that would be, your Mark Davis or Joe Tsai. Now that the
Clara Tsai erasure.
Clara, I should say Joe and Clara Tsai. Thank you, Patrick, for my internalized misogyny just came out there.
Girls could be billionaires too.
Yeah.
Now that the Timberwolves Lynx ownership saga is worked out, I think they'll be more inclined to spend. Ishbia was not, so like there are actually a bunch of new people involved. In terms of like the salary, I think is just going to be the biggest change in the CBA, and like the numbers I've heard are like salaries could be 3 or 4 times as much, which is pretty serious. But it's still like at the dollar level, not that much, right? So yeah, I'm not exactly sure how heated things will be. I would guess we'll have a better sense of that in the middle of the season, but so far I don't really think either side has like said much about to like suggest what the temperature of the talks is right now.
Yeah, I feel like we've talked a lot about next season that hasn't happened yet, and a little bit about this season that's about to happen. I'm curious about last season because for 12 or so months that held the title of most anticipated season in WNBA history, largely because of like Caitlin and Angel coming in. And I just want to know, like, as a WNBA writer, my favorite WNBA writer, what was it like to like make sense of the like explosion in popularity that the league experienced and like the good and like very often like very bad, like, I don't know, sort of outgrowths of that phenomenon?
Yeah, I think I like tend to be on the more like I enjoyed last season, end of the spectrum. I know there are some other people who cover the WNBA who like found it incredibly frustrating, and there were points of it that I also did find frustrating. But for me, sports are just like a thing I can talk about with people, and the more that people watch it, the more people I have to share it with. I'm a social creature like that, and so that part was fun. Like it's fun to just get texts from people saying like, whatever, like explain to me Dejanay Carrington right now, right? I do think like some other media entrants in the scene were like clumsy about the way that they covered it. There was like kind of this odd convergence of like people who came into the WNBA because they have never like felt a place for themselves in sports fandom generally. There were people who came into the WNBA space and were like had this grounding in like the tone of men's league discourse, and I think when those two groups meet, the results can be very strange. And I don't necessarily have an answer about like how, like what WNBA discourse should look like. I would like to think that it doesn't have to reach the lows of NBA discourse. But there are like parts of the way that the NBA is covered and talked about that I find interesting, invigorating, like actually illuminating that I don't think exist in the WNBA. And I would like to see more of that, more just like specificity in the coverage, better like X's and O's talk. So I think like ideally there's some balance, but yeah, I don't know. That's sort of what happened, which is that like a lot of people who aren't really used to being in the same room were thrust in the same room.
Yeah, and like I guess I was sort of asking sort of in a indirect way about like the Caitlyn Angel like race war framing, and then Kathy's like kind of refusal to like actually say that the racist stuff was bad because Caitlyn was like the poster child. But then like you wrote this great blog about the cynicism of that discourse, but something that I liked is that like we had an incredible finals last season. Like the hoops in Lynx Liberty was like amazing, and I feel like the ratings were pretty huge, and I hope that people come into this season like remembering that as like the main thing of last year is like Giddy said, Courtney Williams is like if Russell Westbrook went to therapy. Like I'm so excited to watch her this season.
Yeah, finals was nice for me. It was like actually pretty therapeutic because I think like right before it I was just going through a low couple of weeks where I was like, wow, like it sucks to just read about the WNBA on the internet right now. And sometimes just like going to a basketball game, you're like, oh, this is an actually good thing that I really enjoy watching and talking about.
I don't have to think about outkick.com. I can just like watch this pick and roll coverage.
No needing to 12-foot IO your ops paywall to read about what they're saying about the W. What we're all kind of getting at is something that I have been thinking about with WNBA coverage broadly. Is I was and I kind of want to run this. It's not quite a theory, but just maybe a loose framework by both of you, which is I was listening to the Ringer WNBA show with Sarah Tsoi, and in one of her kind of like season previews with the creator of No Cap Space, Andre Hobner, I believe is the pronunciation. It's an excellent conversation, but one of the things that I noticed was the flitting super rapidly between the micro and the macro stuff. Like these, and we're doing it here where we're like, there's this basketball that's going on the court in the finals, and then this like racial discourse. How do we talk about race online? Mega removed thing. And that happens in the NBA too, of course. Like all there's an unlimited, ever expanding galaxy of garbage that people talk about associated with the NBA. But something that I was kind of testing in my own head is that how much it it almost like needs to happen in the WNBA, this flitting back and forth between the micro and the macro. A great example is they were previewing the Sparks, and you can't no smart pundit could talk about the Sparks season and the Kelsey Plum trade and what that's going to look like on the court without also talking about the Sparks as an organization feeling pressured by the rising tide of ownership caring about investing in the WNBA and like needing to get their shit together. And that's this like larger order. Do you care about women's sports? Do you care about now? Do you care about it now that there's dollars and cents behind it? Micro, macro flitting. And then of course, like Caitlin Clark's another great example. And this season, there's some of that too with like, what's Caitlin gonna represent? Is she going to be the most famous? Is she gonna be marketable? Is she gonna get a shoe deal? Blah blah blah. Or like, are we gonna see her shoes? But then also just like on the court, she maybe is gonna be part of the most high powered offense in the W this year. And so I don't know if it's good or bad, right? It's kind of interesting that this flitting happens back and forth. I think my question, Maitreyi, for you is like, A, does that seem right? That this kind of flitting needs to happen. Maybe why do you think it needs to happen? And like, or if it's not, what else? What is going on? Is that like maybe my own broken Twitter brain?
No, I think you're correct that is the sort of prevailing mode of WNBA discourse. The like historical materialist in me thinks that it largely has to do with the resources allocated to WNBA coverage at a lot of places. Like, if you cover the WNBA at a major outlet, you are like most of the time the only person doing it, or maybe you have one other person doing it with you. And so, imagine if like Bobby Marks, Shams, Chris Herring, Wendy, Ramona, and like, they all had they were all like one person doing all those jobs. Like that person would probably be like a little bit worse at doing all the things that those whatever 6 people I just named do.
They look like a boss in The Last of Us.
I would love to see Shams style writing applied to the Ramona Shelburne like anecdote.
They should do it like an April Fool's thing, just like all switch jobs.
I would love that.
I would love to see that. But yeah, I think like that's kind of what it is. Whereas like just like the way a lot of WNBA reporters have to work is as generalists, because like they do have to cover everything.
Right.
And so they're maybe a little bit more comfortable shifting in and out of those modes. But I think like some things just like fall through the cracks that way. Like I said, I would just I would like more X's and O's coverage that I think like some people are really good at it. I actually think Sirat's really good at it. At the Ringer, the like athletic people are very good at it. But it's just like hard to do that when you also have to be like a business reporter and to do the like occasional column about the race war or whatever, and like just like do all these different jobs. And so yeah, that I think is like a large cause of it. And this is largely the case for me too, where like I do most of Defector's WNBA coverage. I enjoy like having that variety in my job. Like I would not want to just like only do Bobby Marks style stuff. I think like life as WNBA Bobby Marks would be pretty boring, because the WNBA like cap, it's just a hard cap. The CBA is probably half the size of the WNBA CBA. So.
Except for one day in a year from now. It's going to be
when everything changes. Yeah, ideally you have your race war reporter, you have your X's and O's reporter, and they don't have to interact. But I wonder, like, does that like needing to do everything, does it sort of feel like you have to, or that like NBA writers generally have to like justify the sport's like existence as like a first principle? Like you can't just write a straightforward story about like, here's how the Lynx defend the pick and roll. You have to be like, and here's why the WNBA is good. Like, I don't know. Do you feel like you have to do that balancing sort of?
Yeah, I think that's true of reporters, and I also think that's like true of the athletes in a way I find interesting. Like if you go to a WNBA press conference, I tell the story all the time, and I've probably written about it. But I remember the 2023 finals. So that was Aces Liberty. It was the game that New York won, Game 3, I think. And just like, so the series is still going on, and then like Stewie after the game gets some question about like, what do you think this means, like, or like, what has this moment in women's sports been like? And that would be just sort of, I don't even know what the NBA equivalent of that would be, but it would be kind of a bizarre thing to ask, yeah. Like while the finals are going on, right? But I think like women athletes are very much trained and expected to like step outside themselves and assume this ambassadorial kind of role where they have to like, they also are like flitting between the micro and the macro, right, when they talk about their sport and themselves, and so yeah, it's and that's sort of a like product of the media thing where I mentioned about them, where like everyone is trying to write about everything, and so then the players are kind of also asked to do the same and think about themselves in the same way.
I saw the exact same thing happen. I was covering the WNBA draft, and some of the questions in the draft room were stuff like, you know, like gets drafted to a new team, you know, whatever, and it's like, how does it feel to be a role model for a future? And it's
right.
Like, can't we just ask about, you know, going to Dallas or what even just something like, what does it mean for you, Paige, to get drafted? But yeah,
and I do think like, so this is actually something I have gone back and forth about, because while yes, I do want WNBA players and women's basketball generally to be covered with like that same specificity and like attention that I think men's basketball gets, like I do actually feel that there is some social value in women's basketball, and that like the fans I mentioned who do not see a place for themselves in the ecosystem of men's sports, like I think it's nice that they do see that place for themselves in women's basketball, in women's sports, in a world that is like just very cruel to women and is like intent on making women like shrink themselves, sometimes like literally, but certainly figuratively. Like I actually think it can be really important for people to be in this space where like women are encouraged to like be everywhere and do lots of things and assert themselves. And so like I don't think there is zero like merit to thinking about women athletes that way. This is like something I've sort of, after like a long time of being the very like just treat them like normal athletes, like I think I have to be realistic about what women athletes do represent, but I still feel like the balance is a little strange, and I still think that's like asking a lot of the athletes themselves to talk and think about themselves in that way.
And the other last thing, or one thing for me, is that balance that you're talking about. It's off in the NBA too. It's like this whole podcast is almost founded on the idea that the balance is all out of whack, and like we know all the weirdest, wrongest things about the NBA athletes, despite, you know, all this access and blah blah blah. So
yeah, I think like to your point, Maitreyi, I think that is like a really interesting and like correct way to think about it. And like for whatever quibbles you can have with that, like I'm noticing in my life with like the Valkyries about to start playing in a couple days, like so many people who like have zero interest in like the NBA playoffs, who like, I'm like, oh, do you want to hang out and watch basketball tonight? They're like, fuck no. Are like, they feel like it's very easy for them to like get into the Valkyries because there's all these like great on-ramps. Like a friend of mine was at a bar, and she saw someone watching a Valks preseason game, and they were just like taking notes in a notebook. Like, okay, I'm learning who the players are. Like, it's like there's like this like real, I don't know. It seems sort of easier to become a fan in a lot of ways, and like that is probably good, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Like for a long time, a selling point for the WNBA was that it was like still fairly affordable. I think that's increasingly not the case.
Especially for the Valks, like tickets are expensive.
I'm glad the
Yeah,
shareholder
and it's
value.
sort of like perversely
shareholders are-
celebrated, like ticket prices for Angel Reese versus Caitlin Clark are like averaging $900. This is awesome. Women's sports are growing. I was like, it kind of just sucks. But
yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Patrick.
I think like I think Caitlin Clark is a really interesting figure in particular to talk about with all this, because her answers for like 2/3 of the season, whenever she was asked about this stuff, was just like, I just want to hoop. Like, I don't really give a shit about all the other stuff. Like, I just want to like do crazy stuff on the basketball court. And then like, I don't know. Some people were like trying to criticize her for like trying to have it both ways. And some people are like, well, you kind of have to like talk about the league in this other way. And I don't know. I feel like she is sort of, would you say she's the face of the league already in her second season?
I mean, she probably is to a lot of people. I think that's when they think of the WNBA, they think of her. So
such that conversation is both like totally real and totally stupid. I think she is. Yeah. Like,
I mean, and they could win the title this year. Do you think they could win the title?
I think I'm like a little bit lower on some of their free agent signings. I feel like they had the offseason of like, they added a bunch of people you've heard of, but I'm not sure if those people are like good. But they are pretty serious upgrades on the other people, at least. And, you know, the Fever had a very good offense for the second half of last season, and they've like pretty majorly upgraded on defense in some starting spots. So yeah, I think like,
can we talk a little more
right
about this show this crazy offense? Because I've heard a little bit of like, oh yeah, the Fever are going to have this really high-powered offense, and part of that is Caitlin, of course, but then part of this is some of these new additions. Can you talk a little bit more about like why this offense is going to be so, or why some people think the offense is going to be so high-powered? Because you did just say that.
Yeah, I think it's better shooting, like veterans. So Sophie Cunningham joins the offense, and she's been like a pretty solid 3-and-D player on like a Mercury team that went to the finals. It was kind of a fluky finals,
that was a Mickey
admittedly.
Mouse finals run.
That was, yeah, it was funny. That was like, I still think back to that Vegas Phoenix series and remember how bizarre that whole series was.
Was that Asia's first MVP season?
Yeah, that was because that was after.
Oh,
Didn't
okay.
she won in 2020? Right?
Yeah.
The COVID MVP.
Speaking of Mickey Mouse. Anyway, sorry. Go on.
Yeah, so her, DeWanna Bonner, who's also like very much been there on the like perpetual, always the bridesmaid Connecticut Sun. She's been in big games, and I feel like I'm always surprised by how low her 3-point percentage is. She's like the like best bad shooter in the league, because in my memory she has made very big 3-point shots. So yeah, I think those are the big one. Natasha Howard, I'm like a little bit lower on.
Yeah.
But
this is a team of Kelsey Mitchell merchants anyway. Like, she is one of my favorite players to watch. And she was it last season where she was like really, really good in the second half, like kind of throughout?
Yeah, I mean, she and Caitlin played incredibly well together. And so like that's kind of the team's firepower, really, is the two of them.
Who else are you excited to watch this year? Like, what team are you like, oh, there's some new stuff here and I want to see how it all fits together? Or like, what team has like a cool rookie? Like, I don't know, like who are you, like if you see them on WNBA League Pass or ESPN, you're like, I got to watch that.
I mentioned coaching changes, and I think like I'm curious to watch some of the teams with or I'm just curious to see like how the new coaches actually like work and how they bring their style. Like, so Atlanta hired Carl Smezko, who coached at FGCU, and like their whole thing was like they never took any mid-range shots. Like they would not take any.
He's an analytics boy.
He is. He was an analytics boy. They would like only take high percentage shots, and I'm just curious to see how that works in the pros with a like roster of like a sort of older and more experienced roster. Brittany Griner's playing there, and has like a very lovely mid-range shot, I think. So I'm curious to see if that survives. Phoenix, I enjoyed watching last year. They do not have a new coach, but another thing where they hired a coach from the NBA, and I think like because the WNBA coaching jobs were not super appealing just salary wise for a long time and only are starting to be, like, it could kind of just feel like it was the same people getting jobs, or there wasn't a ton of new blood. And so I've really enjoyed watching him. Alyssa Thomas is on that team now, and I think the idea is that she is going to be like the Draymond of their like death lineup, where she's like playing this point center kind of thing.
She's such a sick passer. I love watching her play. I really thought they were going to win last year.
She's really fun to watch, and she's surrounded by like shooters in a way that I didn't really feel like she was in Connecticut these last couple of years. So yeah, Phoenix is my league pass team, I think. I'm finishing up my WNBA preview right now, and that's kind of what I decided on when I was putting my things together. But their booth is pretty tragic, and I hate listening to them. So
why? What are they?
Yeah, who is it?
They're just not very good. It's what's her name? I can't think of it. Cindy Brunson. I'm not a big fan.
Yeah, you heard it here first. Do you think the Valks will beat the Aces in the Western Conference Finals, or like how? What is that inevitable championship run?
I do not think the Valks will beat the Aces in the Western Conference Finals.
And is the 17th pick the most overrated pick in basketball?
No, you're right.
They're just the semifinals. Sorry, what was the other question?
My little caveat was just: is there a more overrated draft pick than the 17th overall pick? Who needs? Didn't the Valks waive their 17th overall pick already?
I don't even pay
Sellers.
attention to like past. A little WNBA hint: never fall in love with anyone on draft night. Everyone is a fraud until proven otherwise.
That's a good rule of thumb.
I mean, that is an excellent rule of thumb. I do want to, because I did know about this, and it's like such a clear example of the league needing to expand. Is that fucking like players are getting drafted 12th and not making rosters? It's just nuts. But I understand, but don't agree with the sort of like roster realities of that. But where I do get lost is what happens from an evaluation process between when they're drafted and when they go to training camp. Is that they see that they get a real sense of them in, because like I think of Kate Martin, who was a second round pick, who is made a roster and is playing for the Valkyries right now. What happened? What happened? How does the evaluation shift so much once they enter a training camp environment that you weren't seeing previously?
Yeah, one other like rule of thumb is I think most front offices in the WNBA are bad, but again, the historical materialism thing. I also think they just like don't have money to like scout players and like actually do things. There's no WNBA combine or anything like that where you could actually get measurements and stuff like that. You do have like several years of college tape that I guess you do not in men's basketball, right? Or for like real top prospects. But yeah, I think another thing is that there was a third round of the WNBA draft, which is so dumb and should not exist.
Yeah, it's funny that there's 3 rounds when like the 14th pick gets cut.
And you're just like stealing their labor rights for no reason.
If that was like in some form of like, if that had to do with like bread rations in something, it would be like, this is a failed state. The 14th biggest bread ration is getting lit on fire, and we have a third round of bread rations. That's just like a couple pieces of rocks. Sorry to kind of make this rough analogy, but it is.
I think it works.
It's a failed state kind of like situation.
I was in Chase Center yesterday, and Kate Martin is like the number one advertised Valk. She's like, when they have the like banner of like 4 people, she's like in the foreground of everything, which is, as someone who watched the Aces, worrying. I don't think they're going to win many games this year.
Yeah, it's sort of like how like this random like teammates of Yao Ming would be super popular in China, or like random like Angels bench players are like really big in Japan, right? She's got the Caitlyn
bump,
the Caitlyn contagion,
kind of the Asia bump too. She's really ideally positioned next to all these great players.
Yeah, they were like very like sweet to her and kind of made her their little
she ran a great
too.
I mean, this is cynical, but she ran a great grassroots PR campaign, like to have gone from the other guard in the Iowa. I mean, she was great in college, but like the other the non-Caitlyn guard to like has basically sort of like vibed her way into being a backup guard for the Valkyries.
Yeah, so shrewd pick by the Valkyries. They've got some jersey sales.
Yeah.
Banked.
Who is going to be the best player on the Valkyries this year, do you suspect? Are we going decentralized best player in the San Francisco tradition?
I do not really know.
Their bench has been scoring a lot in the preseason.
So I like Kayla Thornton a lot. Like the nice thing about expansion drafting from the Liberty is like you're probably going to get a pretty good player. Regardless of who you chose. Temi was a big fan favorite on the Fever.
She hit a lot of, I think she had like 4 or 5 threes in their final preseason game.
So, yeah, they took a ton of threes also.
Yeah, they're doing Warriors stuff out there.
They are.
Good.
Actually, I have a question about that. Do you think the style of play is going to change this year? Like, do you think it's going to be more threes optimized? Or like, how do you see the like X's and O's evolution from last season to this season?
I think like both the college coaches who came in are probably like shifting the league that way. I thought it was funny that Nate Tibbetts, he was hired from the Magic, who you obviously don't think of as a big 3-point shooting team, but then he immediately felt like they were taking a ton of threes. And so
it's like when you go to college and just start partying way too hard because you couldn't in high school. It's like that exact kind of repression thing. Not allowed to take threes. I'm going to take 70 a game. Let's go.
Exactly. I think there's like also even the number of threes the Orlando Magic take feels like a lot in a WNBA game. The window is so shifted.
Yeah, that's interesting. The Aces are going to be pretty good again still, right? Like losing Kelsey Prune, maybe that'll even help them, and because they'll be able to guard someone in the playoffs. Who knows?
So I think the Aces would be good. I think like the top level talent is still good enough, but I'm not there on Jewel is better than Kelsey. Like I still think Kelsey's a better player.
Yeah.
Even accounting for the prune-ness on
pretty disastrous Jewel season last year too. Speaking of the Storm, I just saw that Malonga is not going to play for the French national team this summer.
Yeah, and neither is Gabby Williams, which is interesting.
So what's up with these French people? You wrote a great story about Malonga after the draft, French Wemby.
Who I am, she is of the rookies. I am extremely excited to watch her play. Just like she's
so cool,
and she just looks like extremely like fluid, almost like a current version of Evan Mobley's like fluidity. But as a rookie, like her movements are just like I just think she's gonna be great.
She also, sorry, this is unscouty, but she's just like a real sweetie. Like I felt like she just really lit up a room at the draft.
Crazy fit.
Oh, yeah, because you were there at the draft, right?
Yeah, I went to the. It was funny. So before the draft, they have the little like thing where you go to the Empire State Building and like take a bunch of photos. And that morning, like every single draftee looked like they hated themselves and hated their lives. Like I wasn't that early either. I was like 9. But I mean, it had been a pretty long weekend for them, and like some of them were just coming like straight from like whatever Paige had been doing all the like championship stuff, and a bunch of them had been playing in the Final Four, and they all looked so miserable. But then Dominique, sweet Dominique, which had just like a huge smile on her face, and I was like, I love you and I will lay down my life for you.
I'm excited. Gabby Williams is also one of my favorite players to watch in the league. And I think those two together, I don't know how good the Storm will be necessarily next season, but like, I'm excited to watch them for sure.
Yeah, I think that's another good League Pass team to point out because they've got those two. They've got Izzy. They should be a very good defensive team once again. Yeah, the thing about Eurobasket is interesting. So, like, as a bit of context, one kind of janky thing about the WNBA is, like, it tends to be pretty interrupted by the international women's basketball schedule. So, like, European players will just, like, dip and go to this European tournament in the middle of the year, and there isn't, like, an international break kind of thing. So you're just, like, missing a large chunk of the season. There is a break for the Olympics, but not for this. And so French players in particular have been like the number one like absentee types. I think the Federation French Federation has some beef where they in the past have been like, if you don't show up for this, you will not make the Olympic team. And it's important to those players that they're on the Olympic team. Now I think they have eased up a little bit. And I think like just generally those federations are going to have a little bit less leverage when WNBA salaries go way up. And I think like the WNBA teams are just going to be like much more appealing for international players because right now, like, you know, French players like come and go. They like take some seasons off. A lot of them are just like playing in European leagues in the WNBA off season. And so, you know, some of them want to rest. But yeah, I think like when the money equation changes a little bit, we'll maybe start seeing that less. And so I thought that was interesting that both of them did, because Gabby Williams in particular has like pretty much always prioritized French national team stuff over the WNBA. And so for her to make that decision, I thought was eye-opening.
Wait, speaking of the WNBA offseason, there are no longer rivals. This shit is unrivaled. Obviously, a ton of players spent the offseason playing 3-on-3. And you at least maybe you wrote this, I think it was just in our Slack, had this interesting theory about how, like, what effect the changes in the offseason, like players no longer go to like Russia and Israel and stuff in the offseason. Like, what effect do you think that will have on, not to use this word, the product next season?
I mean, I hope players will be better. I hope they'll feel like more rested. The other thing that's going on is the WNBA schedule itself is getting longer. So it's possible that that just cancels out whatever extra rest players are getting in the off season. Even in the last, so I think Kathy Engelbert started as commissioner like before the 2019 season. And I think then the season was 34 games, and now it's 44 this year, which is a pretty big increase.
Very large, yeah.
Not a very long period of time. And so actually I was at Unrivaled for a few days, and I was talking to I was kind of curious just before the CBA came up, like, how long do you think the WNBA season should be? Because I'm not exactly sure if there's any like hard upper bound on it. I imagine there sort of is with arena availability, that it's not going to go to like 82. But I've always been curious, is it like closer to 82 than 44 or what?
Because there's a lot of expansion that's like going to happen in the next few years too, right? Like Cleveland, Portland.
Yeah, there's Toronto is starting next year, and then Cleveland hasn't been announced yet, but I think that's that's supposed to be the team that's going to be the 18th team. Is that right?
Yeah, because there's 13.
No, 16th.
Yeah.
16th. So yeah, there are going to be like a lot more teams. Presumably the like networks will just like want more inventory at the finals this year. They announced that the finals are going to be 7 games instead of 5. And after she announced that, everyone was like really excited. And then after game 5, I was like, I could not bear to watch 2 more games.
It looks so dead.
It was so tired. And so, yeah, I think like the salary going up will just change the offseason calculus for a lot of players. It's already pretty rare for like top players to go overseas. The last run of number one picks, like they're not going overseas anymore, and I think like unrivaled sort of ate up that group of players also. And I think the overseas market is just drying up a little. Like players are not going to play in Russia or Israel right now anyway. And so, yeah, it's sort of interesting. Like there's like a bunch of things going on. The geopolitical stuff plus the actual just like money changing in the WNBA.
Well, I need to go. So I was trying to come up with a geopolitical joke there. The geopolitics of this podcast hopefully will remain the same, whatever that means. Between next
Whatever
week,
that means.
But Maitreyi, thank you for coming on. You are also one of my favorite WNBA writers. We didn't get a chance to talk about this, but you wrote an excellent piece about Diana Taurasi, which I suggest everybody go check out. Just it's just a good. We've been talking in kind of like large order stuff about like where the league's future of the league, past the league, present of the league, but Diana really is like the avatar for that, and I just think you did a great job of telling that story through her. So excellent piece. And yeah, go read all of Maitreyi's stuff.
Yeah, do it. That story was so good. And yeah, thank you for coming on. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.